Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, as promised, I bring you another video about the love story of James and Diep. As many of you already know, James has returned after a long period of turbulence, and now both he and Diep are preparing to face Mr. Hone, James's father, head-on. They are no longer hiding. They are standing up to protect their love and everything they believe is worth fighting for. So what did they do, and where will today's story take us? Watch until the end to feel the full journey. The midday sun poured harshly over the small garden in front of the house, making the ground shimmer with waves of heat. Yet under that burning sunlight, Diep kept working diligently. Every movement, bending down to pull weeds, lifting bricks, arranging small tools, was slow and careful, as if each action held a meaning tied to the life she was trying to build. Right beside her, little Nee, wearing mismatched sandals and flushed cheeks, followed her everywhere. The child watched Diep work, then tried to mimic her, picking up bits of grass with tiny hands, running back and forth even though she was clearly tired. Sweat stuck her hair into small clumps, but her eyes still shone bright and clear. "I want to help you, because I love you." A simple, innocent sentence, yet it landed in Diep's heart like a small stone hitting the softest place inside her. She paused, looking down at the child gazing up with eyes so pure it felt like they could see through her fears. Just 3 years old, and yet the warmth she brought made Diep's throat tighten. Diep knelt down and gently wiped the sweat from the child's forehead. Every day with Nee reminded her that she was no longer the lonely woman she once had been. She had to be stronger, steadier, not just for herself, but for this little girl beside her, for the fragile future blooming in their small home, and for the love she still held for James, burning quietly but deeply. When they took a break under the shade of a tree, a soft breeze cooled the air. Nee sat close to Diep, small legs dangling. "Auntie Diep, can Uncle James come live with us? Please?" Her voice was tiny, almost as if she were afraid the question itself might make Diep sad. Diep pressed her lips together. The pause was brief, but enough to make her heart sink. She wrapped her arms around the child, letting Nee rest her head on her shoulder. The innocence of children sometimes hurt more than any accusation from adults. "That is a beautiful wish, Nee," Diep whispered, her voice soft enough to blend into the wind. But deep inside, a quiet sigh echoed. What seemed like a simple wish, something a child thought could be granted with just a nod, was the very dream Diep had never dared to allow herself. Not because she did not love James. If anything, her love for him was still warm, still alive. But it was surrounded by too many obstacles: Mr. Hone's disapproval, the scars of the past, and fears they both had yet to speak aloud. Diep looked down at the innocent face resting in her arms. A child who only wanted a complete family, who hoped the man she called uncle could become someone who lived with them. But Diep, an adult, did not dare place her heart somewhere fragile. Under the heavy noon sunlight, holding Nee close, Diep closed her eyes for a brief moment. For 1 second, she allowed herself to imagine James standing at the doorway, smiling that familiar warm smile, calling out to her and to Nee. Just 1 second, then she opened her eyes. Reality remained, along with the challenges waiting ahead. And she knew, she needed to be stronger than ever. After finishing the day's work, Diep hurriedly gathered her notebooks, double-checked the list of workers, and prepared to take little Nee with her to the payment area. The garden, freshly harvested, still carried the faint scent of ripe fruit mixed with the earthy smell of warm soil, making the air feel unexpectedly pleasant. Nee trotted beside her, her sandals still on the wrong feet, occasionally tugging at the hem of Diep's shirt as if afraid to get lost. Lynn, James's close friend, was already waiting for them. When he saw the two of them approaching, he smiled warmly and waved. He had always been the one who understood how things worked around here, Everything from hiring workers to handling the little administrative tasks Diep was completely unfamiliar with. During the days James was away, it was Len who stood beside her, guiding her through each detail, organizing the workers, recording expenses, keeping the operation steady. "You're here, Diep. Today's harvest looks great," he said cheerfully, unable to hide his admiration for her effort. Diep smiled back and set down the stack of wages she had carefully prepared. She counted each bill with tired, slightly trembling hands. Len watched her for a moment before pulling out an envelope from his pocket. "Here. James gave me some extra money the other day. Take it, just in case you need something." Diep immediately stepped back, raising her hand in refusal without a second thought. "I can't take it, on Len. You've already helped us so much, taking money would feel wrong." "It's fine. James asked me to." "I know. But if I accept it, wouldn't that mean I don't respect your kindness?" Her voice was soft but unwavering. The honesty in her eyes made it impossible to insist further. Len looked at her for a long moment, then sighed and put the envelope away. "You're exactly like James described. Stubborn, but good-hearted." Diep laughed quietly, a warm yet faintly bittersweet sound. Despite how difficult life still was, her pride remained intact. She wouldn't let herself rely on others more than she absolutely had to. After paying each worker, Diep bowed her head in thanks. Nee copied her, pressing her palms together and bowing her tiny head, making everyone nearby burst into amused smiles. The atmosphere softened instantly, as if all the day's burdens had been set down at once. As the afternoon faded, golden sunlight stretched across the rooftops of the little neighborhood. While Diep packed the bookkeeping papers, a familiar voice called out from afar. "Nee, come here, sweetheart." It was Mrs. Huynh, James's mother, stepping out of her car. Her hair was neatly tied, her posture elegant, but her eyes softened instantly when they landed on Nee. The little girl ran to her, hugging her leg and babbling excitedly about everything that had happened that day. Mrs. Huynh gently stroked the child's head. "How about going to the Christmas festival with Grandma today? There will be lights, music, and Santa Claus." The moment Santa Claus was mentioned, Nee's eyes sparkled. She rushed back to Diep and hugged her tightly. "Auntie Diep, can I go? Please?" Diep stroked her cheek and nodded. "Go have fun, and listen to Grandma, okay?" That was all it took for the little girl to squeal with joy and follow Mrs. Huynh like a tiny bird discovering a wider sky. Before leaving, Mrs. Huynh turned back, giving Diep a gentle, meaningful look. "Get some rest, dear. You've worked enough for today." Diep simply smiled and watched them walk toward the gate, hand in hand, Nee's laughter drifting further into the evening breeze. The sight was so peaceful, so warm, that even an outsider would feel happiness spreading through their chest. But when their figures disappeared beyond the street corner, the yard suddenly felt much larger. A small gust of wind tugged at Diep's sleeve. She stood still for a long moment, eyes fixed on the road Nee had just taken. Her heart felt lighter, yet strangely empty. Partly because Nee was no longer skipping beside her. Partly because the warmth of James's family always brushed against a quiet wound she had never fully acknowledged. But deeper still, because she sensed that her life was slowly approaching a turning point, one where every decision she made would matter more than ever. In the city, when his calls went unanswered again and again, James couldn't sit still. The spacious apartment suddenly felt cramped and suffocating, as if the walls were slowly closing in on him. He tried calling one more time, but all he heard was the endless ring on the other end. A wave of uneasiness tightened his chest, each heartbeat pounding up into his throat. Unable to take it anymore, he dialed his mother. "Mom, where are Nee and Diep?" I've been calling Diep nonstop, but she isn't picking up. On the other end, Mrs. Huyn's voice sounded gentle, but underneath that softness was something faintly strange, as if she were hiding a void she didn't want him to notice. "Nie is with me. She's safe. She's having a great time at the Christmas festival. But I haven't seen Diep." That was all it took for James to close his eyes and let out a heavy breath. Relief washed over him knowing Nie was safe, but his worry for Diep only grew, a thick storm cloud swallowing up any sense of clarity. He had no idea that at the very moment he was pacing in anxiety, the woman he loved was facing a conversation that could change both of their futures. That evening, inside the vast wooden workshop where a single yellow bulb hung high above, casting sharp fragments of light across the concrete floor, Diep stood tall before Chairman Hone, James's father. The room was so still that even the fading hum of machinery could be heard. The scent of fresh lumber, engine oil, and cold cement made the already heavy atmosphere feel even heavier. Mr. Hone regarded her with an unreadable expression. His face was stern, the harsh lines of authority carved deep by years of power. In the past, that gaze alone would have been enough to make Diep crumble. But tonight, she was no longer the trembling girl she once was. And then, the words she had never heard spoken directly, were uttered from his own mouth. He had forbidden James from returning home. He had tried to push them apart. He had offered her money to make her disappear. The reason? Because she was poor. The air in the workshop seemed to thicken. But Diep did not cry, nor did she bow her head. She stood still, her hands tightening slightly, a silent reminder to herself that she must not waver. "Yes, I am poor," she said, each word sharp and clear. "I know that. But I am poor in money, not in character." The sentence struck the room like a blade, even the wind felt as if it paused. Diep reached into her bag and placed a thick envelope on the wooden table. The soft thud it made sounded like a quiet declaration. 200 million. The exact amount he had once given her, to buy her silence and her absence. "I brought this today." She straightened her back, meeting his eyes without flinching. "Not to return your money, but to show you that I earned this myself, without relying on anyone." Her breathing was steady, but her eyes shone with a strength that was unmistakable. "I used to be weak. I used to be scared. I used to run away. But now, I am strong enough to take care of Nie. And strong enough to become someone James can depend on." Mr. Hone tilted his head slightly, as if reassessing the woman standing before him, a woman he had once deemed unworthy. Diep's voice remained calm, but carried the weight of a shifting season. "If you ask for it, I can earn 100 times this amount. Not to challenge you, but to prove that I can stand beside him with my own strength." Silence filled the room. A deep silence, long enough that it felt like one could hear the heartbeat of every person present. Mr. Hone was genuinely taken aback. In his memory, Diep had been a fragile girl, hands trembling as she held the envelope he'd given her, eyes lowered in fear. But the woman standing before him now was so unwavering, so resolute, that he could no longer deny her growth. This woman no longer stepped back. No longer bowed her head. No longer begged for permission to love his son. He stared at her for a long time, a faint flicker of uncertainty crossing his otherwise steady gaze. Diep stood there, small in stature but strong as a young tree facing a storm. She had not come to ask for acceptance. She had come to prove her worth. And in that moment, for the very first time, Chairman Hone saw in her a strength he had never noticed before. Leaving the wood workshop behind, Diep quietly walked along the narrow road running past the factory. The old street lights cast long yellow streaks across the ground, stretching her shadow into a thin shape, fragile, yet resolute. The night air was cool, carrying with it the faint scent of wood that clung to her clothes. But this time, her hands did not tremble, and her shoulders no longer curled inward like someone bracing for fear. The conversation, a battle of wills, with Chairman Hone had not frightened her the way it once would have. Instead, it felt like a powerful jolt to her heart, waking her up, forcing her to look at herself clearly, reminding her that if she wanted to protect what mattered most, she had to change. Every step along the dimly lit road pulled her deeper into a new clarity, a new strength. Diep realized that if she wanted to protect the little family quietly forming in her life, herself, James, and little Nee, she could not rely forever on pity or the kindness of others. James was strong, but he carried burdens he couldn't shoulder alone. Nee was too young, too fragile, needing something steady to hold on to. And she could not remain someone who simply waited and hoped. She had to stand up. She had to grow. She had to be better, far better. And then, in that quiet moment on the empty street, a thought flashed through her mind like a ray of light cutting through the night. She would begin her own business. Not to brag. Not to prove herself to Chairman Hone. Not to avenge the insults she had once endured. Her purpose was much purer. To prove to herself that with her own hands, her own grit, she could build a future worth believing in, for her child, for James, and for herself. When she reached the small house still smelling of new wood, the warm lights glowing inside eased her heart. There, she found Mrs. Huyn gently rocking Nee to sleep. The little girl curled in the woman's arms like a tiny kitten, breathing softly and steadily. The sight made Diep's heart melt, but it also fueled her determination. When Nee finally drifted into deep sleep, Diep sat at the small wooden table near the window. Outside, crickets sang in the grass. Inside, the only sound was the soft scratch of her pen across paper. She pulled out her old notebook, the one that had followed her through so many difficult days, and opened it to a blank page. She began writing the first lines of her future. Expand the fruit garden. Find stable distribution markets. Study management skills. Research building a local brand. Save steadily to open a small processing workshop. With each sentence she wrote, her eyes shone brighter. The simple words felt like threads pulling her heart toward the future she longed for. She no longer saw herself as the woman who once ran away from the city, who once bowed her head and accepted money meant to break her apart from the man she loved. Now, she was seeing a different version of herself, stronger, more confident, with purpose and direction. No longer the fragile girl who cried alone in the dark. No longer the woman ashamed of her poverty or terrified of her past. No longer someone who believed she was unworthy of James. She was becoming a woman she could finally be proud of. Diep set her pen down and smiled faintly to herself. In the soft yellow glow of the lamp, her eyes reflected a rare, unwavering determination born from a life full of hardship. She whispered, softly, yet as if speaking to the whole world, a promise meant first and foremost for herself. For my child, for James, and for me. I will succeed. She closed the notebook. A page had ended, but her journey was only beginning. And this time, she wasn't walking forward out of fear. She was walking forward because she finally believed she deserved a beautiful future. Night had fallen, covering the small garden in front of the house with a gentle stillness. The cool breeze rustled through the low rows of trees as if the leaves were whispering secrets to the darkness. The warm glow of the porch light spilled onto the ground, creating a soft pool of brightness in the quiet evening. Diep slowly closed her planning notebook, her fingertips still tingling faintly with the excitement of the new goals she had just written down. But inside her, there was no fear, only a rising wave of strength, swelling like the tide. It was the feeling of a woman who had just opened the door to her own future. Her eyes shone with a light she had never seen in herself before. No trace of the girl who once bowed her head before fate. No sound of exhausted sighs in the darkness. No trembling when facing insults about her poverty. In their place was something entirely different. The calmness of someone who finally knew what she wanted. The steady resolve of someone who knew exactly where she was heading. The first spark of courage at the start of a journey she would walk on her own, no matter how difficult. Outside, the cheerful laughter of little Nee sounded even before Diep saw her tiny figure running across the porch. Her laughter flowed through the air like a stream of sweetness, followed by Mrs. Huyn's gentle voice. The two of them were playing under the porch light, giggling together like a pair of children. Diep watched them, her heart softening. And in that moment, a gentle reminder echoed in her mind. She was no longer alone. Nee had come into her life like a missing piece, filling her heart with love. Mrs. Huyn was slowly opening her heart, giving Diep a sense of family she had not felt in years. And James, though far away, his presence remained like an invisible anchor supporting her steps. Diep took a deep breath. The night breeze carried the scent of damp earth and the cool freshness of the countryside, sharpening her focus even more. She knew better than anyone. The road ahead would not be easy. Business, management, expanding markets, they were all huge challenges. But then again, didn't everyone begin from something small? Didn't every journey start with a single brave step? Every great path begins with one moment of courage. And tonight, Diep had taken hers. She lifted her gaze toward the night sky. The stars shimmered like small glowing marks, as if recording the dreams of those who looked up at them. In that peaceful moment, Diep allowed a small smile to bloom. She whispered softly, sending her words into the wind as if hoping they might reach James wherever he was. I will do my best, so that when you return, we can stand together, strong and equal. Not with her standing behind him. Not beneath him. But beside him, two hearts strong together, facing whatever storms may come. Just then, the light inside the house switched on, spilling its warm glow through the window. It illuminated Diep's silhouette, wrapping her in a quiet but hopeful warmth. It felt like a symbol of a new beginning, not loud or dazzling, but steady and honest. And so, tonight's story comes to a close. A new page has been written, not with ink, but with courage and determination. But Diep's journey of growth has only just begun to touch its most meaningful part. In the days ahead, she will take her first steps into the business path she has chosen. She will learn to stand firm in the face of challenges, without fear, without hesitation. And perhaps, this journey will bring her and James closer than ever before. What will be Diep's first move? Will she be strong enough to turn challenges into opportunities? And what awaits her on the road ahead? Stay tuned for the next episode to continue following Diep's inspiring journey of transformation.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Mình đang làm cái gì? Sao nó ngu sao chứ?